Hi, I'm Laurie, author of Instead of Medicating and Punishing, and the upcoming book, Nurturing and Empowering Our Sons. A local newspaper article recently referred to a second pandemic occurring in our society now, a skyrocketing number of children suffering mental health crisis and suicidal ideation within the past year and a half. In fact, this crisis has been repeatedly a topic in the media, yet no source will get to the root of the problem. Unfortunately, this article runs with mainstream narratives claiming that the crisis is due to insufficient mental health services during the pandemic. Another common media narrative is that the current mental health crisis in children is a result of children not being in school. I believe these journalists and the well-meaning hospital and crisis workers who are overwhelmed with surges of children filling the hallways of emergency rooms awaiting services are completely blind to the roots of why our children are suffering so much right now. And if they don't open their eyes to it, more children will suffer and many more may take their lives. The year 2017, the year my son Bryson ended his life, saw the highest spike in youth suicides in a decade. Boys and young men in the 10 to 24 age group have for a few years now accounted for 80% of youth suicides in that age category. While suicide attempts by teenage girls are concerningly increasing, teenage boys are dying by suicide at 3 times the rate, and each of those suicides was also an attempt that wasn't counted as an attempt. The year my son took his life, 5,016 boys and 1,225 girls ages 15 to 24 years old killed themselves. Bryson was one of those youths. Each precious life lost was somebody's son, daughter, or loved one. But the tumultuous world events of 2020 and 2021 have only worsened this mental health and suicide crisis for boys, girls, young men, and young women alike. Our children are the canaries in the coal mine of our society. Nature makes it clear that when our children are in distress, when something in their environment is not meeting their needs, or when they have sustained developmental trauma, they will give us alarm signals. The fact is, children in our society have been giving us alarm signals far longer than before the COVID crisis that our society is not meeting their needs. It is only now that their alarm signals are screaming so loudly that the adults that lead our society's institutions can no longer deny it. But tragically, the adults that preside over our society's institutions, especially the mental health, the human services, the educational, medical, and legal institutions, and the bought and sold media, seem incapable of understanding why. As the children scream, these institutions incessantly call out for more of what is hurting and killing our kids. But parents, you can step in, listen to nature's alarm signals, and help soothe your children's unmet needs. We're going to look at 4 stressors, conditions, and circumstances that are harming our children right now, and how you can step in. Before we begin, please just take a second to like this video so that YouTube puts it in front of other parents who also need this information to help their children. Thank you. Let's start with the first stressor and circumstance that's harming our children's mental health. 1. Remote learning and returning to school. This sounds counterintuitive. Isn't remote learning the problem and a return to school the answer? No. School has always been one of the factors causing major mental health crisis in children. When I worked as a mental health counselor, school-aged children, no matter their grade level, were stable during the summer months if they lived in stable, loving homes, but come October, a month or so after school reopened, the behavioral acting out, the anxiety, the hyperactivity, the depression, the aggression, violence, self-harming, and suicidal ideation began to surge. These problems remained steady until mid-June, when school got out for the year. Remote learning only took away the 2 things that made school worth attending: relationships with friends, special teachers and staff, as well as the fun activities that were available. Of course, in the case of abused and neglected children, remote learning may have taken away their one safe place. But in children that lived in loving homes, remote learning forced into children's homes the very things that caused distress at school: regimentation, force, control, indoctrination, busy work, drudgery, intrusion. For children in loving homes, this took away from their time with family and from enriching activities. And for abused and neglected children, the busy work only added to an already distressing situation. Returning to school has not brought children to any pinnacle of mental health. As if school hasn't been distressing enough, in most schools, children are being forced to remain masked for hours, including during sports, breathing in their own CO2, as well as a cornucopia of bacteria and other pathogens on damp, unsanitary masks. In some schools, children sit behind plexiglass enclosures and are forced to stand and sit an unnatural distance apart from others. They also face a sea of masked peers and adults, dulling mutual social cues, hiding smiles, and obscuring important facial nuances of communication. This is rough on any child's development, but for a child on the autism spectrum, this is a social nightmare. Schools in 2020 and 2021 have also been dousing children with developmentally inappropriate political ideologies, which shame children, divide them according to racial, gender, and sexual identity characteristics, indoctrinating them and elevating their levels of fear. What can you do about this remote learning and school stress situation? Free your child from both the remote learning and the schooling nightmares. Homeschool them and use nature and your community as their classroom. I have videos on how to get started with homeschooling and even how to do it if you're a single working parent. I'll put one up top here. The stressor of schooling overlaps with the second stressor that is harming our children, developmentally inappropriate adult political ideologies. As just mentioned, there has been an explosion of adult political ideology being launched at our malleable, impressionable, and sensitive children through the schools. It is also incessant on social media and in the media. What is suitable for grown adults to be debating and discussing is not developmentally appropriate for our young children, pre-adolescent children, or our adolescent children. The fragile mental health state of college youths and heavily politicized campuses and the phenomenon of millennial failure to launch indicates that these ideologies are not even well handled by still developing young adults. But adults have the right to believe and think as they please. But no educational professional should ever be telling children what they should think, feel, or believe, nor should they be instilling fear and shame in children. But from preschool to high school, children are being forced to ingest adult ideologies about race, gender, and sexual identity that are tied to Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto and a 1960s postmodernism, a nihilistic, very negative worldview that used to only be heard in the banter and classrooms of university professors. This ideology forces impressionable children to look at themselves and their peers in a very dehumanizing manner and to separate themselves and their peers into categories of being either oppressors or victims. Children, even teenage children, cannot developmentally comprehend the adult context, abstract epistemology, historical complexities, or future ramifications of this ideology. All kids hear is bad versus good. They internalize I'm bad and they're good, or I'm a victim and they're villains. Children at all ages are naturally self-focused. They believe that they are the center or the cause of what happens in their world. This is a necessary protective feature of their psychological, cognitive, and moral development. It prevents kids from getting too overwhelmed as they gradually learn to form theory of mind, learn concrete facts about life, and then around ages 12 to 15, gradually form the ability to think abstractly. Children require, above all, a home and educational environment that is safe enough to feel secure and stable as they develop these characteristics and these abilities to think deeply and abstractly, and as they develop empathy by being treated with empathy by the adults in their lives. Only then can the child grow into an adult who has the strength to discern and tackle world problems with courage and compassion. However, the shaming ideology being forced onto kids today does not advocate for peace and compassion. Instead, it teaches kids to hate themselves, to hate others, to view themselves as inherently bad or inherently incompetent, and calls for them to judge by their peers by the same harmful standards. Not only is this grossly developmentally inappropriate at all grade levels, it renders children powerless and fearful. It escalates the fear that children are already feeling in the midst of this pandemic, and this fear sets off a fight, flight, or freeze reaction, leading to a chronic sense of anxiety, depression, and a sense of hopelessness. The feeling of powerlessness can also cause trauma. No wonder so many boys are ending their lives. They are the primary targets of the gender-shaming aspect of this ideology. What can you do about this as a parent? Pull your child out of school and homeschool him or her. More and more diverse families of all sizes, races, and demographics are saying no more to the damage done to their children by public schools and their homeschooling or unschooling. Unplug your children from the media and stop exposing them to toxic adult political banter and ideology. Your children do not need smartphones, TikTok, YouTube, and tablets, but they do need love, affection, face-to-face connection, nature, dramatic play, active outdoor play, and fun, exciting, real-life activities with friends and family. This leads us right into the next circumstance that's harming our children: screens. Screens are one of the most developmentally harmful phenomenon, stealing our children's childhoods and stunting their healthy, holistic development. The lockdowns of 2020 only escalated the addiction to screens that many children and parents alike were already struggling with in 2019. Remote learning also contributed to screen addiction by forcing kids to spend hours in front of a laptop, causing children who previously were active outdoors or in sports to become sedentary, and causing further harm to the health of already sedentary children. The damage that screens do to the brains, bodies, and psyches of children is so vast and complex that it begs its own video. For the sake of time, I will just warn parents here that screens are not innocuous, and today's screen entertainment is nothing like the very time-limited Pac-Man that we played in arcades, or the 3 Lives and You're Dead Super Mario Brothers we played on old 3rd-generation consoles. Today's screen use, along with its 8th and 9th generational video gaming, plus social media and live streaming platforms and everything that goes along with those, are causing behavioral addiction, obsessional behavior, skeletal and muscular problems, eye problems, depression, anxiety, attachment disruption, aggression, rages, suicidal ideation, and poor self-care in children of all ages. Screen use is contributing to obesity, sleep problems, muscular weakness, poor physical fitness, and major social skill deficits. Add to that the shaming adult political ideology that is incessantly directed at children online. Is it any wonder why kids want to die in 2021? This leads into the fourth circumstance stressing kids out: fear and hopelessness. These are some of the emotions that are driving suicide. Regardless of where you stand politically, how do you feel about the status of the world right now? Many adults tell me that they feel a constant low-grade anxiety, a nagging sense of restlessness that they can't shake, or a chronic low-grade depression. Many adults are overeating, binge-watching Netflix, and they're obsessively scrolling on their Facebook or Twitter news feeds. If you are feeling this way, imagine how your children feel. If we as adults are being tested to our limits to cope with the incessant daily drumbeat of some new crisis in our state, nation, or world, how do we expect children to want to live this way? Our children and young adults are scared right now. Their entire world and sense of safety has been drowning like a sunken ship. They have been ripped from their peer groups and isolated from family members. They've missed proms, graduations, sports, and special events. They've had their faces covered for a year and have been kept from the activities that gave them a sense of joy and accomplishment. Annual fairs, festivals, and events and concerts that gave our communities meaning have been canceled. Our children have seen or heard of people getting sick and maybe even gravely ill or dying, and they may have felt anxious that they're going to infect somebody they love. And maybe they've been sick and were afraid that they were going to die. The children witness the political anger and stress all around us that are enrapturing the adults. They see the unrelenting negativity in the media, and they receive a dose every day of shaming based upon their chromosomes or hormones. On top of all of this, they see how powerless we are as adults to stop our society's hemorrhaging. And they see how powerless we are to stitch up the rift. How could we expect our children to be mentally and behaviorally healthy in the midst of this circus? But what can you do as parents? Restore a sense of safety, security, and joy into your children's life. Help them create a daily schedule that restores meaning, fun, adventure, and connection in their lives and gives them days to look forward to. To do this, build upon the step that I've already given. Homeschool them, and also unplug them from the poisonous media and restore family and peer relationships. Learn how to sit in a state of mindfulness or meditation. Choose and learn a holistic health practice together, and choose to eat clean, unprocessed, local, organic, or farm-raised foods. Get outside and do a variety of fun activities in nature. Hike all the trails in your county, state, or region. Try a new sport or get back into one you loved. As a family, get involved with music and the arts. Start sharing as a family some of the talents and interests that each family member has. Build with Lego, paint, do crafts, read real books, magazines, comics, or manga together. Cook, build a wooden clubhouse, fix a bike or a car together, sew some outfits for role play. Film a variety show or build from a kit, organize family photos or do photography. Visit museums and science centers, parks, and attractions in your area that are open. You could do what my son loved to do and play Dungeons and Dragons or a different RPG. Do a science or history project together. Go camping, travel, do something you've never done before with the family. Human rights issues can be discussed from a position of love, mutual respect, mutual healing, and progress made, rather than from a shame and fear-based us and them or victim-oppressor mentality. Study the approaches and philosophies of true heroes of peace like Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi, and Fred Rogers. And lesser-known healers of humanity such as Daryl Davis, Ihalakala Hulen, Louise Hay, Valerie Hunt, Marshall Rosenberg, Ashley Montague, Masaru Emoto, Jean Liedloff, and so many others. And seek out the heroes of peace and unity in your community. And perhaps one of the greatest ways to boost a sense of meaning and make this world a better place is to do volunteer work individually and as a family, and do good works to help others in your community. The world is a scary place right now for our children and young adults, with so many stressors, events, and conditions that we can't control. But there is a lot that we can control, including what we allow into our homes and what environments and media our children are exposed to. Crowd out the fearful, toxic influences that are taking our children's mental health and lives, and fill that space with fun, affection, connection, peace, security, enrichment, activity, nature, positivity, unity, meaning, hope, and more days like it for the kids to look forward to. If you found this video to be helpful, thought-provoking, or a wake-up call, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Share this video with other parents so they can help or prevent a mental health crisis in their own children. It just might save a life. Thank you.